This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody. Today my topic is parathyroid. What is parathyroid? Parathyroid, the name itself indicates it is adjacent to thyroid. Okay, I will deal it with the anatomy, physiology, function, and disorders of parathyroid. Okay, and what is its significance in surgery? In general surgery, what are the significance of this parathyroid gland? Parathyroid gland, the name itself indicates it is adjacent to the parathyroid. It is on the posterior side or posterior border of thyroid. There are four in number, but number may vary. Okay, it is not constant. It is developed from the third and fourth bronchial pouches. There are two superior, two inferior parathyroid glands. Superior parathyroid gland develops from the fourth bronchial pouch, and inferior parathyroid develops along with the thymus from the third pharyngeal pouches. Sorry, not bronchial, pharyngeal pouches. Along with the thymus, when the thymus descends into the superior mediastinum, along with it, the inferior parathyroid glands descend. So the third parathyroid glands may develop from may give rise to superior parathyroid, but due to thymus, it descends into the superior mediastinum. It descends along with the this thymus. So the inferior parathyroid glands are they are inferior. Their position: superior parathyroid glands on the posterior border. Sorry, on the posterior border at the superior thyroid artery, and they are more related to recurrent laryngioma. And inferior parathyroid, it is related to inferior thyroid artery. The main function is calcium homeostasis. Calcium, if they maintain the serum calcium concentration, okay, it acts on the osteoclast, resorption of the bone, and maintains the calcium. If there is decrease in the calcium, serum calcium levels, it will stimulate the parathyroid hormone gland, and the parathyroid hormone releases, and it acts on the osteoclast cells, and osteoclast cells will lyse the bone and increases the serum calcium levels. And another action is at the GAT, and another action is at the kidney. Okay, this vitamin 25 hydroxy calciferol is converted to 125 whole calciferol in the kidney, which is the active form of vitamin D, which increases the absorption of calcium and reabsorption from the calcium reabsorption in the tubules. And again on the GIT, it increases the absorption of the calcium. Okay, in this way, the serum calcium levels are maintained. This if calcium is increased, then which hormone decreases the serum calcium levels? Means calcitonin. Calcitonin, which is present in secreted from the parafollicular cells within the thyroid gland. Okay, this is the function of parathyroid. How these are related to surgery means it may hyperfunction or hypofunction. Hypoparathyroidism and increased function means or increased secretion of this parathyroid hormone means it is hyperparathyroidism. Okay, these are the disorders which is related to parathyroid. Surgical significance. Okay, hypo, if there is decreased parathyroid hormone, the serum calcium levels are not maintained. Okay? There will be decreased absorption, decreased resorption, and increased excretion of this calcium will occur. If there is decrease in the calcium in the blood, what are its effects? Its effects are Calcium is required for muscle contraction and muscle relaxation. Okay, if it is mainly responsible for muscle relaxation. Okay, if there is decreased calcium levels, initially it manifests as uh, in the small muscles. Small muscles means, for example, in the hand, hand adductors and flexors, all lumbricals, and all these uh, interosseous muscles. All these are the small muscles. These have very low concentration or low storage pool of this calcium. So, if serum calcium is decreased, there will be muscle contraction, and if we stimulate the muscle undergo contraction, and there will be next phase is the relaxation phase. In relaxation phase, there won't be sufficient calcium. Okay, there won't be sufficient calcium which is required for relaxation. So there will be muscles in the contraction. So these tests are Trousers test and Chopsticks test. And why only small muscle means there will be decreased storage of this calcium, so there won't be relaxation. There will be if there is profound hypocalcemia, it will lead to tetany and spasm of respiratory muscles stridor. That is the last stage. Initially, there will be perioral tingling. Again, this tingling, paresthesias, and all this nerve connection all require calcium. Okay, so if there is decreased calcium, all this will occur. And later on, if there is prolonged hypercalcemia, there will be osteoporosis and all this. So, and this is hypercalcemia or hypoparathyroidism is manifested. Hypoparathyroidism results in hypercalcemia. This hypocalcemia causes all these symptoms. So it is emergency. If there is respiratory spasm or respiratory muscle spasm, the patient will have respiratory arrest. Okay, the patient is unable to breathe. There will be stridor. All this may lead to death of the patient if you do not correct the calcium. In your house surgency period, it is very important in surgery ward. Okay, why? Because the most common cause of hypoparathyroidism is surgery, iatrogenic. Iatrogenic means why it is iatrogenic? Because thyroid surgery, we perform total thyroidectomy, hemithyroidectomy, and all these. These parathyroids are present in the posterior border. Okay, posterior border of thyroid gland, and they are in size of 2 to 3 mm. Okay, they are similar to the color is yellow in color. It is very difficult to differentiate whether it is a fat lobule or lymph node or parathyroid. We have to differentiate these three intraoperatively, and we have to safeguard this parathyroid. See, if we do hemithyroidectomy, there won't be any problem because the other two parathyroids are safe. So we can go for hemithyroidectomy, and the risk of hypoparathyroidism is relatively low. But if we do total thyroidectomy or radical leg dissection along with the total thyroidectomy, there will be high chances of this parathyroid removal accidentally. And also the vascularity, the blood supply to these parathyroids are from superior thyroid artery and inferior thyroid artery. In thyroidectomy, we ligate the superior thyroid artery and inferior thyroid artery. If we ligate these vessels, and these arteries are end arteries to the parathyroid. Okay, there won't be any other arteries. These are end arteries. So if we ligate these arteries, there will be decreased blood supply, and they will go atrophy. Atrophy of these parathyroid glands occurs. So due to decreased vascularity, if we safeguard, so there will be chances of hypoparathyroidism, and that is usually due to transient hypoparathyroidism postoperatively. This hypoparathyroidism occur. How we identify intraoperatively? See, if we touch, they have inherent vascularity. If we touch the gland, it will blush. Okay, that is one identification. Already I have removed the gland. What to do? How to identify? After removing, I have seen a small nodule. I got confused either it is parathyroid or fat lobule or anything, or lymph node. Then to differentiate between the parathyroid and fat lobule, if we take a small bowl of saline and if we place this lobule or fat lobule or parathyroid into the in the saline, it will go downwards. I mean bottom. It will settle at the bottom, and the fat lobule, which is less density, it will float, or it will float in the saline. So already I have removed the parathyroid. What to do? Then we keep this parathyroid in the sternocleidomastoid muscle. We divide or we make a pocket in the sternocleidomastoid and we crush this parathyroid and we place it in the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Okay. Then it will survive. And in the ward, we have to be very in the post-operative. Next year, when you have become the house surgeons, I mean, as a surgery resident, we will keep post-operative rounds. Say morning we will do surgery, okay? Around at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. we have done total thyroidectomy. We will ask the patient, I mean, we will ask our residents to do post-operative rounds and house surgeons. If they have to see what they want to see. What we expect them to see means two complications. One is bleeding, hemorrhage, that is subtaxular hematoma, or subcutaneous hematoma. These are emergencies. Two emergencies in the post-operative period we have to look for. In the first POD, we will ask for any deep to the deep fascia, any hematoma or subcutaneous hematoma is there or not. They manifest as stridor again, difficulty in breathing. And next emergency is hypocalcemia. Okay, hypocalcemia also manifests, severe hypocalcemia also manifests as stridor. So we have to see, differentiate these two conditions. These two are emergencies. These two are very curative. We can treat them in time. If we didn't treat them, they are very danger. Okay, one patient we have lost in, not in our unit. Another unit they have lost the case due to subcutaneous hematoma. Okay. These are bedside. We can treat these complications bedside only. So you are the main. You have to identify. You can treat the cases. Okay. Simply removing the sutures, we can evacuate the hematoma and decrease the pressure over the trachea. If hypercalcemia is there, IV calcium gluconate. Okay. We ask the patient if any perioral numbness is there or not, and bedside clinical tests are Taussig test, sign, and Chaustrac's sign. These are nothing but principle. We occlude the Taussig sign means operated hand or Taussig sign. We apply the BP cuff in the arm and we raise above 40 mm mercury or above the systolic pressure, so we can occlude the arterial supply. So there will be decreased blood supply to the hand. Okay, there won't be any supply of further calcium. So there are poor stores in the calcium in the small muscles. So they will be contracted. They will be present in the contracted state. There won't be any relaxation. This is flexion at the metacarpophalangeal joint, extension at the interphalangeal joint, and adduction of the thumb. This is obturator hand or acoustic hand. It is called. The main principle is we are decreasing the supply of calcium and we are stimulating these small muscles. Okay, and another is Chaustrac's sign. Just we tap over the facial nerve supply. So we are stimulating the facial nerve repeatedly. Then the muscles supplying this facial, these all are small muscles only. Large muscles we cannot elicit this sign when very late stages, when there is calciumia, the calcium levels are very low. When there is serum calcium levels 5, 4, 3, then they will get involved. Large muscles. These facial muscles and hand muscles are the small muscles. We can elicit early. They are early involved in early stages of hypercalcemia. So there will be numbness and paresthesias or contractions of these facial muscles. Simple treatment is again this hypoparathyroidism may be transient or it may be prolonged. The only treatment for this is supplementation of the calcium. Okay, normal daily requirement is 1000 milligrams, but in hypoparathyroidism we have to give this Shelcal or 1000 mg TID or 1500 mg TID for at least 3 to 6 months. Okay, then they will then the symptoms will be suppressed. In emergency, if there is stridor and everything, we have to give IV calcium glucose. Okay, very slowly for 10 minutes, 10 ml. We give IV calcium gluconate and we give IV infusion also if it is very severe. Okay, the symptoms you will see within before while you are giving this injection, you can see the symptoms are spasm or anything will subside. That is hypoparathyroidism. Next, hyperparathyroidism. There is increased parathyroid hormone. If there is increased parathyroid hormone, the stimulus for this increase or anything is usually normal physiology is if there is decrease in the serum calcium levels, there will be this will stimulate the parathyroid hormone, and that parathyroid hormone acts on these three organs. That is bone, kidney, and GIT, and it will increase the serum calcium levels. But if there is uncontrolled or unregulated increased parathyroid hormone means irrespective of serum calcium level, if there is increased parathyroid hormone, it will act on all these three organs and CNS also. This calcium is required for conduction and everything, and membrane potential should be maintained. And again, if there is excess calcium in the blood, it will get deposited in the various organs and it causes calcifications. Dystrophic calcification and metatrophic calcification will occur. Okay? If the action on the bone is, it acts on the osteoclast cells. Osteoclast cells means they will absorb, resorption of this bone will occur. So the bone will get osteoporosis. If there is excessive osteoporosis, there is increased risk of fractures. And another one is it will form bone cyst. Okay, excessive resorption will causes this bone weakening, and there will be within the bone there will be hemorrhages, and this will form bone cysts. These are characteristic features of this hyperparathyroidism. And again, in the skull they will get flea-bitten type of osteolytic lesions. Okay, multiple lesions, multiple areas of osteolysis. Osteolysis, they appear as radiolucent. Okay, they will appear as a black in the X-ray. Bone will appear as white in color, dense, hyperdense. These osteolytic lesions will become hypodense. There is decreased decreased density of this bone will occur, and multiple osteolytic lesions will be present. That is the, you will get an MCQ question also in this hyperparathyroidism. Next is the kidney. There will be decreased absorption of this calcium from the kidney, and this will increase calcium. Hypercalciuria will be present, and there will be increased incidence of renal stones. Okay, nephrolithiasis is another feature. And in the CNS, they have psychic symptoms. This is we call it as bronze, moons, and in the if there is increased calcium on the GIT, there will be decreased absorption of this calcium and increased motility of this GIT will be present. The causes may be again anywhere in the body, primary, secondary, and tertiary. These three terms indicate primary means within the gland. The abnormality is present in the gland. This causes primary hyperthyroidism. The causes are adenoma, hyperplasia, and malignancy. They are present within the gut. This become autonomous, independent, or there won't be any inhibitory stimulus for this, and it will become monarch and it will secrete parathyroid hormone continuously. There won't be any decrease, and this increased hyperparathyroidism causes hypercalcemia, and all these symptoms are present. Okay. Next, secondary. Secondary, the gland is normal. Okay. The gland is very innocent, but other glands, other causes such as in renal failure or any abnormality which causes decreased calcium, uh, this causes stimulus for this. Actually, there won't be any calcium decrease. The calcium sensor receptor uh, won't be functioning, and this will stimulate the parathyroid hormone, and there will be increased parathyroid hormone. That is secondary hyperparathyroidism. If tertiary hyperparathyroidism means tertiary, these two are not causes. In prolonged, for example, in secondary hyperparathyroidism, renal failure is a cause. If renal failure is treated, for example, transplantation is done, after that also we have removed the secondary cause, but even after removing the secondary cause, the parathyroid becomes autonomous. Okay, on prolonged duration of this stimulus, the gland becomes autonomous and it continues to secrete hyperparathyroidism. That is tertiary hyperparathyroidism. Okay, surgery comes. We can treat this primary causes. These are hypercalcium, hyperparathyroidism causes like adenoma, parathyroid adenoma, hyperplasia of this parathyroid adenoma, and parathyroid malignancies. All these are surgery is the treatment. Surgery means you have to remove this parathyroid hormone, parathyroid gland. Okay, they are four in number. See, adenoma may be single, but all four glands can be involved. Carcinoma, single, usually single gland is involved, so we can remove that gland. Hyperplasia, usually this hyperplasia usually will be multiple glands, means all four glands are involved. In such cases, we have to remove all these four glands. So the main problem of this parathyroid surgery, parathyroidectomy, is they're very small. Okay, if they're enlarged, also their position is variable, their size is variable, their number is variable. We have to look at preoperatively. Okay, identifying this gland or anything will be difficult. That is, if we identify, we can easily remove. Okay, it is so identification is very important. Hyperplasia. Again, this hyperplasia, one important is related to MEN syndrome. MEN means multiple endocrine neoplasia. The name itself indicates there are multiple endocrine glands are involved, and these are grouped under multiple endocrine neoplasias, MEN1 and MEN2. This MEN1, the parathyroid gland is involved, and then MEN2A, this parathyroid gland is involved. There will be difference. These are men in one gene involvement. They are autosomal dominant and tumor suppressor gene. If it is congenital, involved, that is familial. Familial means one, history of family members, history will be present. Multiple endocrine glands in MEN1, pituitary, parathyroid, and pancreas. These three are involved. These three endocrine organs are involved in this syndrome. Syndromes are nothing but not single group of organs involvement. Then we call as syndromes. Okay, multiple manifestations are present. So in this, there will be multiple. All four gland involvement will be present. Hyperparathyroidism. The again, one important MCQ here in MEN1 is parathyroid, pituitary, and pancreas. The patient may again hypercalcemia. We cannot be regularly or very frequently we cannot see this hypercalcemia patient, and symptomatic management is also very rare. Presentation of hyperparathyroidism itself will be rare. We have to identify. Okay. Patient may present as renal stones. He may be treated with renal stones, but the primary cause is hyperparathyroidism, and patient may present with pancreatitis. The cause may be hyperparathyroidism, but the manifestation is different. We will treat this pancreatitis, nephrolithiasis, and everything, but we cannot identify whether it is parathyroid unless there is gross swelling of this structure is present or not. Again, we will get confused with thyroid. Okay. So that is the main problem of not identifying the main pathology. What is causing this primary disease? Okay. So here the main patient in men one, again the patient may present with pancreatic endocrine neoplasm, adenoma, but most common is hyperparathyroidism. So if a patient present with pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor, I have diagnosed a pancreatic endocrine tumor, means I have to rule out hyperparathyroidism. Okay, if a patient is having hyperparathyroidism, there is increased calcium levels and everything, parathyroid hormone. First to treat is hyperparathyroidism, not pancreatic endocrine tumor. Okay, first we have to treat hyperparathyroidism. Next only we have to do surgery for pancreas. After stabilizing these calcium levels and removing hyperparathyroidism. Okay, and men too, again hyperparathyroidism. The manifestation is very severe and early age of presentation will be there. So again, the surgery is hyperparathyroidism, removing of all 4 glands, parathyroidectomy, and removing of all 4 glands. Okay, here there is only a hyperplasia. This is benign. There won't be any malignant changes. So if we remove all parathyroid glands, there will be risk of hyperparathyroidism. Okay, there is decreased calcium levels, and the patient is risk of having tetany and everything, spasms. So in benign conditions where there is hyperplasia, we remove 1 gland or 3.5 gland we remove, not all gland, 3.5 gland, and with rest of the gland we place the rest of the gland in the brachioradialis muscle in the forearm. Okay, why? Because means there will be hyperplasia or any malignant changes, we can keep, we can directly directly see the abnormality and very easy to reoperate. If we keep, if we uh, if we keep it in original position, means resurgery in the neck, means there is increased risk of recurrent laryngeal palsy, damage. And to avoid that, after removing this 3.5 gland, rest of the gland is placed in the brachioradialis muscle. We create a pocket here and we place this tissue. After crushing it, mincing into pieces, we place this half of this parathyroid gland into the brachioradialis muscle pocket, and we keep a non-absorbable suture or clip, metallic clip, to easy identification or follow-up cases. So in that way, we can avoid this hypercalcemia or hyperparathyroidism. So identification of this parathyroid gland, because it is very difficult, they are more in number, variable in position, and only superior parathyroid in 60%, they are constant in position. Rest of the gland very difficult to identify. So we have to, in preoperative localization of this gland is very important. Investigations, serum parathyroid hormone, next ultrasound. First investigation we usually do is ultrasound. Ultrasound neck, sorry, ultrasound neck, and the next, even if we cannot identify this gland, again in ultrasound, again high resolution 3D 4D ultrasounds are there, especially for parathyroid. Okay, why these 3D 4D and everything have come, means they are very difficult to locate. They are very small in number, small in size, and variable in number. We have to remove all the gland, otherwise the success rate of the surgery is very poor. Okay, next, if ultrasound we cannot identify, next we have to go for CT. CT, again 3D 4D CT are there. Even if we cannot identify, systematic scan. Here, this radionuclide nucleotide, we inject and we take the scan. It is localized into the parathyroid gland. So it is more investigation of choice in parathyroid. Okay? Even then 30% of cases are negative. I mean, we cannot identify, we cannot locate these parathyroid glands. So next, intraoperative identification, we can go by intraoperative ultrasound and invasive methods. Invasive methods means sampling of this parathyroid hormone from the internal jugular veins. Okay, these are drained into the internal jugular vein, sampling. So we can selectively sample this blood and do parathyroid hormone calculation. So if there is more parathyroid, it is located in that area, and then we can do intraoperative exploration. Sorry. Intraoperative exploration is done. Initially, when this 3D, 4D or ultrasound, advanced ultrasound or investigation systematic scan is not available, they used to do exploration. Bilateral MK exploration is done for parathyroidectomy to identify these. And again, one important is intraoperatively how we can confirm whether I have removed all parathyroid glands or not. See that T-half of parathyroid hormone is 5 minutes. Okay. Initially, at the time of surgery, after giving anesthesia, I will draw some blood from the patient and I will calculate the serum parathyroid hormone levels to some value around 100. Okay. After removing, I have removed all parathyroid hormones, and after 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes, I will again take the blood sample of this patient and send for serum parathyroid hormone level. So, if the serum parathyroid hormone is less than 50, then I will say I have done all the parathyroidectomy, or I have removed all the parathyroid hormone glands. That test is called Miami test. Usually, we confirm intraoperatively that the surgery is successful by this test only, because we cannot say that we cannot give. And another one is fresh frozen section. Okay, pathological examination of this removed tissue to confirm that is parathyroid. It is parathyroid, and I have removed all parathyroid glands. Okay. Again, these are the tests, and post-operatively there won't be any complications. That is in brief of parathyroid. Okay. Just I will go slides. There are 4 parathyroid glands lie on the posterior surface of thyroid. The superior glands are located on the posterior medial aspect of thyroid near the trichoesophageal groove. See, this trichoesophageal groove, everything is related. That is recurrent laryngeal nerve. Okay. Inferior parathyroids are more widely distributed and below the inferior thyroid artery. The common sites for ectopic parathyroids. Why? Because means along with the thyroid, the inferior parathyroid, they descend and along with the thymus into the superior mediastinum. So along with this superior thymus, these parathyroids also descend. So there is high chances of ectopic parathyroids. Thyrothymic ligament means it is nothing but connective tissue or ligament which connects the inferior core of the thyroid and thymus. And this also is very important in retrosternal growth. Okay. Superior thyroid folds, trichoesophageal groove, retroesophageal space, and carotid tissue. Why? Because all these sites we have to explore in the parathyroidectomy surgery for identification of this parathyroid. Average weight is 35 to 40 milligrams, and inferior parathyroid originates from the third branchial post, whereas superior parathyroid descends from fourth branchial post, and superior and inferior parathyroid glands receive the blood supply from inferior thyroid artery in 80% of cases. Okay. Single artery, so end arteries, and they are very vulnerable during surgery, and this leads to transient hyperparathyroidism. Okay. Cells are made of oxygen cells, fibrous stroma, and adipose tissue. Hyperparathyroidism, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Okay. Primary causes are parathyroid adenoma, parathyroid hyperplasia, parathyroid carcinoma. Adenoma is benign encapsulated neoplasm responsible for 80 to 90%. Okay. Most common cause of hyperparathyroidism. Parathyroid hyperplasia affects all parathyroid glands, responsible for 10 to 15% cases. Multiple gland hyperplasia has sporadic disease, also associated with multiple endocrine neoplasia. And type 1, type 2A. Okay. And parathyroid carcinoma is very, very rare, less than 1% incidence. All the fibrosis and mitotic activity are common. They are not specific for malignancy. Secondary hyperparathyroidism. The pathogenesis is multiple contributing factors such as genetic mutations in the receptors, calcium sensing receptors, and altered vitamin D metabolism, and resistance, impaired calcium response to parathyroid hormone, retention of phosphorus, and altered metabolism of parathyroid hormone. In all cases of secondary hyperparathyroidism, the failing kidney is unable to hydroxylate vitamin D2 to active vitamin D3, that is calcitriol. Secondary, usually non-operative strategies are used because this is due to secondary chronic parathyroid gland is normal. There is no abnormality in the parathyroid, and when this non-operative management is, we cannot control this hypercalcemia with non-operative medications or controlling of renal failure. Then we go for parathyroidectomy. And tertiary, when this becomes autonomous and hypercalcemia can occur even post transplantation of kidney. Okay. This is also tertiary also we usually go for medical management, and if it is not resolved, then we go for surgery. Parathyroid surgery in men 1 is debulking or palliative procedure because recurrence is inevitable. So that we implant this parathyroid into the heterotrophic autotransplantation of the resected parathyroid tissue. We keep in the foracoradialis. With the hyperparathyroid men 1, men 2 tends to be milder. Okay, compared to 4 gland involvement in men 1, there will be 1 or 2 gland involvement, one gland, usually one gland, and less aggressive in men 2A. Criteria for surgical: if serum calcium concentration greater than 1 milligram per ml of upper limits, bone density of lumbar spine, hip, and distal end of radius that is greater than 2 standard deviation below the peak bones. Okay. All individuals with primary hyperthyroidism are less than 50 years, and patients for whom medical surveillance is undesirable or impossible. These are the indications for the surgery. And how a good response to parathyroidectomy is shown in neuromuscular symptoms, that is proximal muscle weakness, respiratory muscle capacity, and confusion, depression. All this mental illness is from significant and durable increase in bone mineral density within 6 months of surgery, and urinary calcium and nephrolithiasis reduced by surgery. Only localization is necessary was to locate good endocrine surgeon, because here the location, the surgery is not complicated or difficult, but location of the gland is very important. So these are the non-invasive tests and invasive tests: testimambi SPECT, ultrasound, 4D CT, MRI, PET CT. These are the non-invasive, and invasive are angiography, venous localization, intraoperative ultrasound, and biopsy. System scan demonstrating the left inferior parathyroid adenoma. Here, increased tracer uptake include thyroid, salivary gland, and heart and liver. These are the organs which increased uptake. So we have system member scan has come to identify parathyroid gland preoperatively. This is a 4D, 4D, 3D or anything means there is high resolution only. Okay. And contrasts are used here. Ultrasound, intraoperative, intraoperative ultrasound is there, and preoperative ultrasound is also there. Angiogram showing if we inject a contrast, this is a hypervascular, and there will be blush in the right posterior position. Okay, this is a blush. Here is a inferior parathyroid. Ultrasound guided FNAC aspiration if any suspicious nodule, because thyroid is there and posterior to the thyroid posterior border this parathyroid adenoma will be present. So if any FNAC we do, we can identify, but it is very rare. Intraoperative parathyroid assay and radio guided parathyroid. Okay, parathyroid assay is nothing but the Miami test. We calculate the serum parathyroid hormone before the surgery, and after removal of all these glands, we again do the parathyroid serum parathyroid hormone at 5 and 10 minutes after excision. Okay, if there is 50%, less than 50% of this value, we have our surgery success. If the levels or values are maintained above 50%, means we have to do re-exploration. We have to do again explore all these ectopic parathyroid glands and everywhere for any remnant parathyroid tissue is there, because it will cause the symptoms. The symptoms won't subside, and there will be failure of this surgery. This is again GABA probe, nothing but similar to the sentinel lymph node biopsy. Here we inject this technetium 99 system be injected, and intraoperatively this camera, gamma camera, will count the radiation, and maximum located areas will explore. All this by means to decrease the injury to the surrounding organs, laryngeal, and to remove the gland. Surgeries, these are the traditional. Traditional means non bilateral neck exploration. There will be a very big scar from here anterior sternocleidomastoid to the right side, from right side to left anterior sternocleidomastoid. Very big incision, and general anesthesia. All parathyroid glands should be identified, and intraoperative provision section or Miami A test should be done compulsory. And minimal invasive unilateral neck exploration we can localize if we have preoperatively localized with adenoma or malignancy. Simply incising small incision is given over the swelling, and removal of the gland itself is sufficient. Again, video assisted parathyroidectomy. This is the minimally invasive. Similarly, endoscopic thyroidectomy, how we do. Okay, axillary approach or bilateral axillary approach or bilateral mammary approach. These are various approaches to keep the ports. Okay, we keep the port and we keep the trocar. We insufflate the gas and we create the space in the subcutaneous space, and we remove these glands. This is endoscopic parathyroidectomy and video assisted parathyroidectomy. In video assisted, just only no pneumoperitoneum is created. In endoscopic parathyroidectomy, the pneumoperitoneum is created. That is the difference between the video assisted and endoscopic. This is remedial means if there is persistent hyperparathyroidism after first surgery. If the symptoms persist and recurrent hyperparathyroidism, then we call it remedial parathyroidectomy or redo parathyroidectomy. These are the post-operative complications: an injury to recurrent laryngeal nerve, superior laryngeal nerve, and intraoperative monitoring of this nerve, recurrent laryngeal nerve and SLN nerve by ultramyographic signals. this damage or injury is less. This is the intraoperative parathyroid edema. Hematoma and wound infections and hyperparathyroidism due to removal or revascularization of remaining parathyroid can result in hypercalcemia. These are. Thank you.